Let's go to this conversation now. As South Africa heads towards the elections, the vetting of candidates has become more important than ever before. Looking at some of the developments in some municipal councils, for example, has led to some concerns. You think about Dr. Murunwa Makwarela, who was removed as Tshwane Mayor after it emerged that he was insolvent, and a ward councillor in the Northwest currently accused of rape, among other charges. It has also emerged that this councillor was also facing a murder charge at some point. Now, who should be tasked with the process of vetting these candidates? Let's speak to Elections Management Consulting Agency of Africa CEO Lulu White and local government specialist Dr. Tim Maake. Thank you so much to you both for your time. I'll start with you, Dr. Tim. Is it the responsibility of political parties, or is it the IEC that needs to vet potential candidates?
Thank you very much for having me, and good evening to your viewers. I think first and foremost, it is a dual responsibility both of the political parties and the Electoral Commission to make sure that we do have candidates that are above reproach. What I mean is that the IEC has got a legal duty or a constitutional duty to make sure that it runs the free and fair elections. And amongst the elements of a free and fair elections would be to have candidates that are credible enough to occupy a public office. And in that regard, I would believe that both the political parties and the IEC have got a legal and a moral duty to make sure that the candidates are properly vetted, so as to make sure that we do not have those that are found not to be in line with the provisions of the law, which requires candidates to have a free areas of great concern as far as their quality.
So, Dr. Maake, if there are problems, then we should look at both these parties.
If there are problems, we should look at the gaps that could have arisen during the process coming from both parties. But mindful of the fact that the key party here, the leading factor will be the political parties themselves. But when it comes to the IEC, they receive these candidates from the political parties. And I think they do have got a legal duty to make sure that they also do some double checking or verification, so as to make sure that you do not have the kind of incidences that you've already mentioned. All
right, let me go to Lulu now. Lulu, candidates that must be above reproach, the political parties tasked with this particular responsibility. Are the requirements clear, though, for these political parties on conducting the vetting processes?
The requirements are actually very clear. So political parties have a responsibility to ensure that the candidates that they bring forward are outstanding citizens, they don't have criminal records, or if they did have criminal records, the 5 years period has expired. So that there are processes that actually, but credit, as far as I remember, is not one of them, which is why perhaps the issue of the former executive mayor of the city of Tshwane was not picked up. But if, for example, this was a criminal, he had a criminal record that was that is not older than 5 years, I'm certain that would be something that would have been picked up by the community and possibly even by the political party, and that person would not have been able to stand as a candidate for the election. Now, while the IEC has a responsibility to be able to capture those candidates and within the criterion that is given in the Electoral Commission Act, the responsibility, the onus really does lie with the political party that submits those candidates to ensure that the list and the person that they submitted has gone through their own vetting exercise and can actually stand in for public office.
So, Lulu, then, from your vantage point, if the process is there and it is clear, and I heard you on the one when it comes to the credit, but let's look at the other cases that have then emerged. Where then are they going wrong in this vetting process?
Civil society is also failing in this vetting process. So political parties, essentially, they are failing. I think the biggest challenge that political parties and the biggest criticism that political parties have been facing over the last how many years has been the deployment system that political parties seem to be having. That deployment system has come under critical criticism, whether it was because of qualifications, lack of qualifications, whether it's because of whatever reasons. The deployment program is the reason why most political parties seem to not be really doing well as far as vetting those candidates, because political credentials are regarded to be much more important than any other thing that a candidate can have. I think we did see that the ANC did attempt in the previous local government elections to sort of change that type of narrative. And we saw that when the president of the ANC basically drove a campaign where people were asked to bring about their qualifications to make sure that they actually qualify to represent the societies that they wanted to represent. But political parties mainly fail because of the deployment system that they have in their political parties. So people are not vetted on the strength of whether they can contribute, but rather on what the type of history that they have with the political party. That's a disadvantage that they are currently facing.
You agree, Dr. Maake?
Well, I think for me, beyond what Ms. White has just alluded to, yes, political parties are failing society mainly on primarily two basic fundamental issues. One is the whole question of the arrangements that are there within political parties, which they normally will call them factions or whatever the case you might want to call them. Because that simply means that when the vetting process is going to be undertaken, those that are in the group of Ms. Lulu White would find a way of getting a little bit of protection by way of ignoring some of these findings and taking them very light and trying to make sure that they can't have their preferred candidates out because of the fact that they operate as a grouping. But if political parties were to be very firm and be very fair, we will certainly not be having candidates that will go through a process, but later on we get to realize that there's some elements which are not looking good in terms of those candidates. So the whole question of a faction or groupings, I'm in the list because I am more liked by Ms. Lulu White, and she knows that if I go in, then she has got my support in terms of me having to be elected into public office bearers or whatever the case might be. So that element, it's what is also leading to the failures by political parties. And I think even if the whole vetting process did not look at the credit standings of individuals, but the fact that a person needs to occupy a political office, as a political party, surely you would want to go beyond the minimum level standards that could have been prescribed, because this person is going to have to run the administration or having to manage or monitor a huge amount of money, which is in the form of a budget. And you wouldn't want people who would have those kind of, limitation in as far as financial management or regularities are concerned. So yes, the political parties, if they can do away with the question of who is in support of who, then we'll be able to have a process that will be a little bit more clean and credible enough to bring kind of candidates that will be without any reproach.
Lulu, let me come back to you then finally as we wrap up. You mentioned something, interesting, that civil society must also be looking at itself here. What do you mean?
I mean, for example, the issue of chronism and the deployment of cadres in this particular instance, if you're a member of civil society and you know that a particular person, because often they do play very loud and very active roles in those communities, most of the people that are nominated or into these positions. Now, if you're a civic society and you are aware that this particular person had a case for rape or had a case, some of the issues that we've just realized, you also have a responsibility. The IEC has in the election timetable a process where there's a publication of candidates lists. So they go through a whole process of candidates, then they compile them, then they publish the candidates list. And they offer, I think there's a 2-day period, 48 hours. It says that anybody wishing to raise an objection against a particular candidate has 48 hours within which to do that. Now, in the past, not a lot of people have actually taken advantage of that. And the reality is that if people are aware that a member of a certain political party has actually been found wanting in terms of the criterion, in terms of of the character of the leader, they have every right to approach the CEO of the IEC to say to them, look, we know this person from this particular community. We are now lodging an objection against this person as a candidate. Then the IEC would then take that process up with the political party, and the political party would then have to correct it. So civil society often does not take that opportunity to do that, whether they even are aware. Whether there's candidates lists that are being published or not, it's a different story. But civic society also needs to take accountability where these democratic processes are concerned. It's no longer just about the political party. We all have a role to play in all of this.
All right, let me thank you both for your time. That was the Elections Management Consulting Agency of Africa CEO Lulu White and local government specialist Dr. Tim Maake. Thank you so much to you both for your time as we look at, of course, the issues of vetting of candidates ahead of the election.